So next, we're going to start with some of the important concepts of OOPS, that is object orientation, right? So what all we're going to cover in OOPS will be starting with something called as encapsulation, right? Which is nothing but our design pattern, right? Then we'll be looking at inheritance, polymorphism, right? We'll be looking at overloading, overriding, right? Which are very important concepts, right? And then we'll be looking at something what is abstract, right? We'll be looking at interfaces, then object, class, right? We'll be looking at data hiding, abstraction, something related to getter and setter, right? So these are very important concepts if you are working on a framework designing part, right, at a very good level. You will be using all these concepts in the framework, right? The actual framework is like the framework is actually designed using Java, not Selenium, not using API, right, web services or any other thing. Framework is purely designed in Java, and these are some of the most important things which is actually a need of a very strong automation framework. So if we talk about inheritance, I mean, if inheritance, what is inheritance? We'll be studying about this in detail, right? But if you haven't applied inheritance in your code, then you cannot achieve polymorphism, right? And without inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction cannot be done. So these things are interrelated, right? So encapsulation, it does not have any dependency in on inheritance or polymorphism or abstraction, right? This is basically our design pattern. There are some keywords used when we're gonna work on inheritance or polymorphism, like extends, implements, right? We're gonna study about all those things. So let's get started with encapsulation first. Now, what I'm going to do, I'll create another package over here and name it as encapsulation. Right. So, like if we talk about encapsulation, now what do you understand by the term encapsulation? Right, encapsulation, if you may have read in theory, right, it is something related to data binding, right? Something you can say wrapping data and methods into a single unit, right? Single unit or unit or like a capsule, right, where you are binding the data members all together. So it is actually like a capsule, I mean, where you are binding the data and methods all together, and you're forming up an interdependency in between them. And it is actually used to provide security. So security in the terms of data hiding and something called as abstraction. So what data hiding means over here, data hiding means that hiding the data from outside world. Right. Outside world, as in over here, the outside world will be the other classes, right? If a member is declared in one class, only that class should be able to access the member. Outside the class, that data member is not accessible. Although when I'm talking about the accessibility of the data member, we need to perform some accessibility, but it will not be a direct accessibility, right? That no other class will gonna directly interact with the data members. So that is what data hiding means, right? Although the interaction will be done, but it will be in using some different approach. It will not be a direct approach, right? So hiding the data from outside world so that they are not directly accessible. And now what abstraction means that force calling those variables using methods. Right. Means when we are doing data hiding, basically we are creating our variable private, right? But still, if any other class wants to use them, then in order to call them, we need to create some methods. Method could be in a form of a getter or a setter, right? So through which we should be able to access those private data members, right? So the interaction will not be direct, but it should be with the help of some methods. That is what abstraction means. So if I show you one of my PDF on encapsulation, so it's like encapsulation can be described as a mechanism in which we encapsulate our code in such a way that it cannot be randomly accessed by other code outside the class, right? And if we want to include encapsulation in our code, then there are some procedures that we need to follow. First is that we need to make our instance variable always private, right? And then we need to make public accessor methods, right? Through which we can forcefully calling code to use these method instead of directly calling these instance variable, right? So we will be using these methods to access those private the variables that we have actually made private, right? And then we will be setting up some naming convention which are set and get, which are also called as setter and getter, right? Although these are not any existing functionality, these are just naming conventions in order to access these private variables outside the class, right? In order to use encapsulation, we will be forming up all these things. Right. So always create your variable private and keep your functionality, that is your method, as public. Because if we create private methods, right? So method is basically our functionality. If we create our functionality as private, then no one should be able to access that functionality, right? So always when you're implementing encapsulation, always create your methods as public and instance variable as private. So first we're gonna see an example where if we don't apply encapsulation, then what the drawback is, and then how we're gonna fix those things by applying encapsulation, right? So what we're gonna do is, let's say I create a class with the name, let's say, bank, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create some variables, some public variables. So public, and let's say there's something called as account number, and I'll set some dummy account number over here, 12056, something like this, right? Then there should be some PIN associated, a PIN number associated with the account, right? In order to access the account, so the PIN number is this. And let us set some balance amount, let's say double balance amount equal to something like this, right? So in a bank there could be a number of customers, right? We are just taking an example of first like any one customer with the account number this, and the pin code for that account is this, and the balance amount for that customer is this. Now, normally, when a customer goes to an ATM, right, he provides his account number or a PIN number and amount in order to withdraw the money from his bank account, right? So, let's say a bank has provided a functionality for withdrawing the amount, right? For the I think I'll create it as a void method. So, I'll say withdraw amount, right? And while withdrawing amount, a customer has to, let's say, provide account number and a PIN number, right? And the amount that he wants to withdraw. Now, let's say when a customer is withdrawing the amount, I mean, there has to be some validation inside this functionality. Validation could be something like if, let's say, the account number, if the account number is equal to the account number that is of this customer, right? And the PIN is equal to the PIN number of the customer. If these both things matches, then the validation is successful, and then only we should allow customer to withdraw the amount, right? Or else, if these information provided are not correct, then it should print a message like if you ever enter a incorrect account name or a PIN number to your card, you normally get a message like invalid credentials, something like this, right? So let me change it to double. Right. So let us try this much and see what output we're gonna get. And before that, there could be another validation that we can add over here, that if the amount, right, if the amount that is entered is less than equal to the balance amount, right, only then we should allow like the transaction to happen, right? Otherwise, if the amount is greater than the balance amount, so it should actually gonna print some message, let's say insufficient balance, right? And if everything is fine, then we'll first be updating the balance amount, right? So we're going to say balance amount is equal to balance amount minus the amount, right? And we can also give some message like amount withdrawal, and we can say amount. And if in case you want to show the balance amount as well, you can show that thing as well. Now, let's say a customer goes to an ATM, and at ATM, let's say I create a class, another class called as ATM, right? And like I'll add a main method over here. So after going to ATM, a customer of the same bank, he wants to withdraw the amount, let's say. So I'll be creating an object of this bank class, and I'll say obj dot withdraw amount, right? So let us first give all accurate number. The account number is 12345 6. The PIN number we provided was, let's say, it's 1234, and the amount that we want to withdraw is less than the balance amount, right? So if I run this, we should get a message that is successfully withdrawal, like amount withdrawal this. If there is something incorrect in the PIN number or the account number, we should get a message that is invalid credentials, right? If the amount exceeds what we have in our balance amount, then we should get a message that is insufficient balance. Now, the drawback of this functionality, if we talk about, let's say, the customer who was withdrawing the amount, his card got stolen, right? And someone else's tried to withdraw the amount from his card, right? So maybe that person is not aware of what the PIN code is. So he may have given a PIN code like this, right? An amount something like this. So if I run this at this time, it will gonna throw some invalid credential. But since that person can access uh, the initial functionality of PIN number, from that bank class, what he can do, he can go to obj.pin number, he can call this member and update it to 2222. Right now, the existing functionality is changed. Now, if I run this now, he should be able to withdraw the amount. So, this is what a security breach is, because he is able to access the functionality which has to be hidden functionality, or which has to be like a private functionality, which should not be like if I talk about pin number, or if I talk about account number, same way like we have updated the pin number, we can also update the account number. We should be able to access the account number and should be able to update this as well. So if we talk about account number, these information has to be constant, and this should not be accessible outside the main class, right? Outside the bank class, it should not be accessible. Otherwise, there should be a security breach, right? If we are able to update this information. Now, here we need to implement encapsulation. And in order to implement encapsulation, what we will be doing is we'll be changing the access modifier for these instance variable to private, right? Account number, you can keep it as public. I mean, if the account number is changed, I mean, it should not show valid credentials for that account. I mean, the balance amount and other things. So this is a global thing. This should remain as it is, but the amount and the PIN number, we should make it private so that it should not be accessible outside directly, right? But if you talk about PIN number, right, if we are providing the accurate account number, and at times there are chances where a customer has to update his PIN, right? The updation has to be done, but not directly, right? Only if it is a genuine customer, if he knows his existing PIN, he can update the existing PIN to the new PIN as well, right? He can replace the old PIN to the new PIN as well. So there has to be a functionality that should be provided to update the PIN number as well, right? So how we're gonna implement encapsulation over here? What we're gonna do? We're gonna create another functionality where we're gonna update the pin code, right? So how we're gonna do it? We'll create a public method, like as per this PDF, right? The accessor method should be public, right? And we'll be doing a force calling. We'll be writing some force calling code to use these methods, directly calling the instance variable inside these methods. So how are we going to do that? We'll say, let's say a method public void update pin, right? So when we are updating the pin, what all information we need? We need the account number, right? We need the old pin, and we need the new pin that we need to update, right? So again, there has to be some validation over here as well. If the account number is equal to the account number, right? That the global account number, and the old pin is equal to the pin number that was initially there, right? If this is not, then the information that should be shown, the message that should be received should be like invalid credentials, like this, right? And if the old pin is equal to the pin number, then we're gonna say pin number equal to, we're gonna allow the pin update, right? It is equal to the new pin, and then we're gonna print a message that is pin changed successfully, like this. All right. So now if customer again goes to a ATM, right, and instead of like we are not able to access the PIN number now because it is a private, right, private variable. So what, like if a genuine customer, he goes, he will be accessing the functionality of updating the PIN number, where he's gonna provide his account number as this, and the old PIN that was actually the PIN that we have over here is 1234. 1234, and updates it to something like 3333, right? And now if I give it 3333 and if I run this, we should be able to withdraw the amount, right? And if you give something else, again, if you give 1234, then you can say invalid credential, right? We got a message invalid credential, but it should not. Okay, so initially the pin changed successfully because we are giving the old pin and the new pin, so it is actually updating the pin. But if we are giving an invalid pin over here, then it should actually throw invalid credentials. So if you update it to any pin over here, you need to provide the same pin over here. Right. So outside the class, you are not able to update the pin using the instance variable. So we have actually updated it with the help of the functionality that is provided by the bank itself. So if we go to the bank class, so this PIN number, we are not accessing it directly, right? How we are accessing it? We are accessing it with the help of a method, right? So we are actually wrapping data member like the method and the variable all together. And that is what encapsulation is, right? Where we are actually binding the data, wrapping the data and the method in one single unit. So it means if any functionality is dependent on any data member, on any variable, so you need to wrap them in such a way that it should be called from a method instead of calling that data member directly. That is what encapsulation is. Now, the other thing, methods, if we talk about, could have return types as well, right? It again doesn't mean that if I have created this method over here, void update pin, right? I can, if I want, I can set up a return type, but it doesn't mean every method will gonna have return type, right? If I talk about return type over here, maybe there's this, if I give any return type, that may not be valid over here, right? Because update pin is like, we are updating a pin, right? At the end, we are just passing a message, pin changed successfully. We are not passing the pin along with it, right? We are not returning any pin. Whenever you go to ATM, you update your pin. The ATM never tells you that the new pin is this, right? So this method will not going to have any return type. Maybe there could be other method that may have a return type, something like after updating the pin, you are depositing a cash as well. So method could be public. The return type could be double, right? Deposit cash. So where you need to pass on the account number, you need to pass on the PIN number, and you need to pass on the amount that you need to deposit. So what happened once you successfully deposit the amount, it should actually return you a balance amount, right? Something like here also you need to add some validations. If account number is equal to your account number, right? And the PIN number that you're providing is also correct. It should be equal to the PIN number. Then only you should be able to deposit the amount. Then you can say the balance amount. Balance amount. We are updating the balance amount now, right? The balance amount like this is equal to balance amount plus the amount, and then it should return balance amount, right? And if the transaction is not successful, you can simply say invalid credentials, invalid credentials. Or if in case you want to return the balance amount, you can return the balance amount as well. amount. So nothing should be added over here, right? You can return the balance amount. Right, but again, if credential is not correct, the amount should not be returned. This is just an example, right? How you can set up return types to a method, right? So, like at times you need to get something from a method, or you want to set something to a method, right? So, the next thing that we will be talking about in encapsulation is using some naming conventions to the method, right? If we are getting any value from a method, if a method is returning you something, it should start from get, right? Like practically, if we talk about Selenium or Appium or any API where you find, let's say, if we talk about Selenium, if we get something from a page, if you're getting a text, if you're getting a title, the methods you'll always gonna see something that says get title, set or let's say get text. If you're getting the text, we are extracting the text from the page, it should be like get text, right? And same thing goes for set functionality. If you are let's say doing a reading and writing on a file, or could be Excel file, right? If you want to set some cell data, right, you need to create a method like set cell data, where the method itself is saying that okay, you are setting some value, you are giving some value, or you are declaring, you're defining some value, and you're setting that value into that particular cell. So wherever you are setting the value, the method should start from set. Wherever you are getting, retrieving the information, the method should start from get. Now, if we talk about set and get, where practically they are implemented, they are actually implemented to update or get the values of your instance variable itself. Like how many instance variable we have over here? We have 3 instance variables. So for all these 3 instance variable, you can create a setter and getter for these instance variable, right? But if we talk about this public instance variable, that is account number, do we have any need of updating the account number? Right, we never update the account number. The account number will always remain as constant, right? So we can just get the account number. We can never set the account number, right? So these things has to be handled logically as well, because no bank will actually going to provide you a functionality to update the account number, right? So we'll never ever going to create a functionality that would say set account number. But yes, we can create a method, a functionality that could say get account number. At times we forget our account number, so it may ask us some questions like some important questions to retrieve your account number, right? And we provide those information, and it can get the account number for us, right? So we can get the account number, but we cannot update or set the account number. Similarly, if I talk about this PIN number, we can set the PIN number, right? But we cannot get the PIN number, right? If we talk about any bank, no bank will gonna provide you a functionality through which you can get the PIN number. You can update that PIN number, you can set the PIN number, but you cannot get the PIN number. And lastly, if we talk about balance amount, we can set the amount as well, and we can get the amount as well. Right. So for which variable you need to create a setter and a getter, that you need to decide. You can have a functionality with the void method as well. You can have functionality with setter and getters. It is completely logical where you actually want to use them. So for example, if I create a setter for this pin number, I can say something like public void set pin number, right? And we can add all these arguments like account number, the old pin and the new pin, and we're gonna have all the validation. If you don't want to create it in this way, there are some functionality which Eclipse actually gonna provide you. Is when you go to source, you see some option called as generate getters and setters, right? You can also retrieve this information by right clicking over here, and go to source and click on an option generate getter and setter, something like this, right? So now over here, you see all the methods, all the instance variable that we have actually created. So this is a public one, and these are private, right? So I can select all these, and if I open this account number, we just need to get it. So I'm gonna create a getter for it. Balance amount, we can have getter and setter both, and pin number we can only set. So you can see if I click on OK, so it should be able to create a getter and setter like this, right? Where the setter is mostly void, right? Because we're not because this method is not returning you anything, right? And the getter are mostly have a return type and they are not voids, right? So, what we have studied so far is we have seen some principles of encapsulation, right? Something related to getter and setter, right? Although the example that you see in the PDF is a bit different, but that is what we have actually used with a different example, right? So, getters and setters, how we're going to define them, right? And then we have seen some benefits of encapsulation. Right, so I'm going to share this PDF with you, just go through it, and in the next lecture, we're going to talk about inheritance in depth, and then we'll be looking at polymorphism. All right.